I've been in wars. I've seen entire armies fall under the weight of the sword. I've seen kings fall, empires crumble, men beg for mercy. But never, in all my existence, had I seen death itself kneel before a man like that day.
The sky darkened in the middle of the day. The earth groaned as if it were about to split in two. And the world, in that instant, crossed a point of no return. On a hill forgotten by the kings of the earth, but remembered by the heavens and feared by the hells, a man hung between heaven and earth, rejected by men, abandoned by his own, silent in the face of violence, yet still giving himself for all. His body was torn apart. Each breath was a battle, each heartbeat a sacrifice. And yet, his eyes still carried something that no steel could wound, a light that pierced the very darkness. When the last breath left his lips, the impossible happened. The veil was torn, the graves opened, and the age-old silence of the temple was shattered by the roar of eternity. But what came next? What followed the death of the one who divided history into before and after? At midday, the sky didn't just darken, it was clothed in mourning. It wasn't an ordinary shadow. It was a heavy cloak of darkness that covered Jerusalem like a silent judgment. The air became thick, difficult to breathe, as if the world itself held its breath before what was happening. Thunder echoed, even without lightning. Atop Golgotha, a cross simultaneously marked the end and the beginning. Jesus bled slowly. His body hung exhausted. His lips barely had any strength, but his presence dominated everything. Around him, the Roman soldiers murmured amongst themselves. None of them laughed, none mocked. Fear had seeped into every face hardened by war. The centurion, a man trained to ignore pain, felt a shiver run down his spine. He had seen many die, but never anyone die like this. With authority, with surrender, with purpose.
This man is not like the others.
At the foot of the cross, the women wept silently. Tears streamed down weakly. John remained nearby, trying to be strong as the world crumbled before his eyes. Then, a profound silence fell over everything, and with a weak voice, but firm as the sound of sacred thunder, Jesus declared,
It is finished.
His body yielded, his head fell, and the earth responded. At that very moment, in the Temple of Jerusalem, the priests were preparing the evening incense. Everything followed the ritual, the same rite as always, until the ground trembled beneath their feet. An impossible windstorm invaded the sacred precinct. The curtains fluttered, the flames of the torches bent, and then the roar. the veil. The veil that separated the Holy of Holies, the place where only the high priest could enter once a year, was torn from top to bottom. Not by the hands of men, not by blades, but by the power of heaven. The priests screamed. Some fell face down to the ground. Others fled in despair. The symbol of separation between God and men had been destroyed. Something sacred, something untouched for generations, now torn from heaven to earth.
They said nothing. The veil has been torn.
Outside, the winds shook the palm trees. Stones rolled from the hills. The walls creaked, and the impossible continued to happen. Some graves cracked. Ancient tombs opened. The seal of death was broken. Chaos spread among the city's inhabitants, but it wasn't the chaos of war. It was the chaos of glory about to manifest itself. At Golgotha, after feeling the tremor, seeing the dark sky and witnessing Jesus' death, the centurion fell to his knees. His eyes, once full of skepticism, now shone with fear.
Truly, this man was the Son of God.
The words echoed among the soldiers. Many lowered their heads, unsure what to think. Others simply watched in silence. The cross, now motionless, seemed to emit a presence impossible to explain. But the signs didn't stop there. Cracks opened in the ground. Graves around the city began to give way. Forgotten tombs were broken like fragile vases. Tombstones shattered. Bones that had once been desiccated now aligned. Flesh upon flesh. Life where there was only silence. Those who had died in faith were returning.
On the eastern slope, a child pointed with a trembling voice.
Mummy, someone's coming out of the ground.
Silhouettes emerged among the olive trees. Men and women in dusty clothes, eyes full of light, firm steps, silent. They walked towards the holy city, not as ghosts, but as witnesses, as a harbinger of what was to come. The gates of Jerusalem opened with the tremor. Some guards fled, others fell to their knees. What is this that is happening? In the fields, shepherds dropped their staffs. In the houses, candles went out without wind. On the rooftops, men watched the dark sky with fear. The world, at that moment, was no longer the same.
In a nearby valley, a herd of goats ran frantically in circles, as if fleeing something unseen by human eyes. Their hooves pounded the dry earth, raising dust, while their wide eyes betrayed a primal terror. The shepherds shouted, trying to gather them together, but it was useless. Something invisible had broken the balance of creation. In the skies, birds that once soared freely through the air now hovered disoriented, beating their wings aimlessly, as if the winds had lost their direction. Some plummeted suddenly, others spun in circles, confused, as if the very sense of up and down had been shaken. Then came silence. Not the absence of noise, but a deep, heavy, reverent silence. The silence of recognition. The silence of something that had just changed forever. It was as if all creation screamed without words, "The Lamb has been slain." In Herod's palace, luxury could not quell the fear.
Servants dropped goblets from their hands. The sound of breaking glass echoed through the marble corridors. One of them ran in despair, crossing gilded halls, seized by panic.
The city is in darkness. Even the temple gods have fled.
Silence, fool. It's just a storm.
But as he spoke, his own voice trembled. He knew. Everyone knew. This was not just a storm. Elsewhere in the city, people still lay prostrate in the streets, some kneeling, others embracing their children, all trying to understand what they had witnessed. Some murmured about judgment. Others spoke of a curse. Very few, almost no one, understood that this was the holiest day in history. The temple columns creaked as if about to collapse, but they did not fall. The altar remained intact, but now it was empty of power, because the acceptable sacrifice no longer rested on stone. It had been made in flesh. Even in the invisible, even in regions where human eyes cannot reach, the demons trembled. At that very moment, a new time began, and everything that would happen in the following days would only be the beginning. 3 days passed. Jesus' body had been hastily buried, wrapped in linen, placed in a borrowed tomb, sealed with a large stone. There was no time for honors, no time for farewells, only haste, fear, silence. The city still murmured about the signs, the torn veil, the darkness, the earthquake. Something had changed in the air, on the earth, in the hearts of the people, although few understood exactly what. But not everyone was at peace. In a hidden corner of the Sanhedrin, the religious leaders gathered hastily. Torches cast flickering shadows on the walls. Their faces were tense, their voices low but heavy with urgency.
We need to silence this before it becomes uncontrollable.
The disciples might try to steal the body.
They will say he has risen. They will say the prophecy has been fulfilled. Then make the tomb a place impossible to violate, so that no one can enter or leave. Guards, seal it with Caesar's seal. No one enters. No one leaves.
At that very moment, in another part of the city, Mary, the mother of Jesus, gazed at the sky through the window. The clouds that had previously covered Jerusalem had now dissipated. The blue had returned to the firmament, but her soul was still shrouded in mist. Her heart pounded with a premonition she couldn't explain. Something was coming, something great, something holy, even amidst the pain. Meanwhile, the disciples remained hidden, doors locked, voices low, tired eyes. Fear completely overwhelmed them. Without the Master, the mission seemed to have come to an end.
He's gone, but
He'll go. What if he comes back?
Peter shook his head in silence. His gaze was hollow. He still carried the weight of denial. Guilt crushed his hope. In the stillness of the night, Jerusalem tried to return to normal. Merchants reopened their stalls. Guards resumed their posts. But the echoes of the cross still vibrated through the stones of the city. Nothing was truly normal. Nothing would ever be the same again. Then, on the third day, as the sun timidly began to rise on the horizon, a new story was about to unfold.
The third day dawned, wrapped in an unusual silence. The stones of the streets still bore the scars of the tremor that had shaken Jerusalem. The air was light, like a spring breeze, yet it carried an invisible, sacred expectation, as if the heavens themselves were waiting for something. Mary Magdalene walked quickly along the narrow path that led to the tomb. In her hands, linen carefully perfumed. In her heart, burning longing. Behind her, other women followed in silence. Their red eyes betrayed a whole night of weeping, yet their steps were steady. The pain was still fresh, but there was something stronger than grief: love. In the distance, the garden began to reveal itself under the first light of day. The shadows slowly dissolved among the trees. When they reached the rock that sealed the entrance of the tomb, a chill ran through their bodies. The stone was no longer there.
Who moved the stone? And the guards? Where are the guards?
The open entrance seemed to glow with a faint, almost imperceptible light rising from within the darkness. Mary Magdalene stepped closer. Her hands trembled. Her heart raced in her chest. The world seemed to hold its breath with her. Carefully, she pushed aside the cloth at the entrance. The tomb was empty. The other women exchanged glances, seized by a silent fear. The linen was there, carefully folded, untouched. But the body was not. An impossible emptiness filled the cave. Not just the absence of a body, but the absence of death itself. Suddenly, an intense light burst from inside the rock, as if heaven had opened from within the earth. The women instinctively stepped back, shielding their eyes, their hearts pounding in their chests. The brightness did not burn, but overwhelmed. And then, at the center of that light, two figures appeared, garments dazzling like lightning, faces hidden by glory. When they spoke, their voices came not only with sound, but with power.
Why do you seek living among the dead? He is not here, he has risen, as he said.
Their words fell like thunder upon the women's hearts, fear mixed with awe. Grief gave way to something impossible to explain. They fell to their knees. The cold ground of the tomb now felt sacred. Mary Magdalene trembled from head to toe, but her eyes were no longer filled with despair. Something new was being born there. Faith.
Go and tell the disciples the being said. Tell them that he is going ahead of them to Galilee. There they will see him.
The silence that had ruled the garden was broken by hurried footsteps. The women rushed out, stumbling between tears and smiles. They wept, yet they ran like those who carry life. For the first time since the cross, there was hope. Meanwhile, in the city, the guards began to regain their senses. Some were still sprawled on the ground, stunned, unable to explain what they had seen. A light from the sky, an earthquake that tore through the dawn, and the stone removed without human hands. In desperation, they ran to the religious leaders.
The body disappeared.
How did it disappear?
A light, a being. We fainted. When we woke up, the stone was no longer there.
The Sanhedrin gathered in haste. Pale faces, tense voices. The threat was real. The rumor of the resurrection could spread like fire in the desert.
Silence. No one will know about this. You will say that the disciples came at night and stole the body while they slept.
What if Rome finds out we're asleep?
We'll take care of it. You'll be well rewarded.
Meanwhile, the disciples were still hiding, doors locked, basting breaths. The atmosphere heavy with fear, guilt, and pain. The promise seemed too distant. Suddenly, the door opened abruptly. Mary Magdalene burst into the room.
Saw the Lord.
Mary, you seem troubled.
No.
Trembling.
I saw him with my own eyes. He spoke to me. He called me by name.
Peter and John looked at each other. Something burned within them. They didn't say a word. They just ran. They ran through the streets. They ran through the garden. They ran to the tomb. When they arrived, they saw the linen carefully folded. No sign of a struggle, no sign of theft. This was not the work of thieves. It was something infinitely greater. That same night, while the disciples were still gathered, locked in and confused, the air suddenly changed. No door was opened, no window moved, but he was there. Peace be with you. Eyes widened. Hearts nearly leaped from their chests. Some fell to the ground, others wept, others recoiled in fear. But it was him, alive.
Touch my hands. See, a spirit does not have flesh and bones as you see I have.
8 days later, Thomas heard everything, but did not believe.
Unless I see the nail marks, unless I touch them, I will not believe.
8 days later, they were all gathered again. Doors closed, hearts attentive, and as before, he appeared in their midst. Thomas, put your finger here. Look at my hands. Do not be unbelieving, but believing. Thomas fell to his knees in tears. My Lord and my God! Jesus looked at him with deep compassion. Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. The impact of the resurrection grew each day. The disciples began to understand. The plan was greater than the cross. Death was not the end. It was the key. But outside that small community, the world still did not understand. In Jerusalem, rumors grew. Some mocked, others doubted, but some began to believe. And in the hills of Galilee, as the disciples climbed to a promised meeting, a new time was about to manifest itself. Something would come from above, something that would change everything. Galilee, with its gentle hills and golden fields, seemed to breathe in peace. But among the disciples there was expectation, tension, hope. Each step towards the mountain, marked by the Master's words, carried memories, questions, and fear. He had promised to meet them there, and they went. When they arrived, the wind was light, the sky clear, the silence different. And then, it wasn't long before he appeared. Jesus, alive, glorified. with the same gaze that had touched fishermen, sinners, and kings. They fell to their knees, not just out of devotion, but because the moment seemed to tear the veil between heaven and earth. Some were in awe, motionless. Others let silent tears stream down their faces. All, however, shared the same look, the awareness that they were before something that no human language could describe. The wind that swept across the hills sounded like an ancient whisper, almost as if creation itself had paused to listen to what was about to happen. Then Jesus spoke, and each syllable vibrated as if it carried the weight of entire ages, as if the whole heaven breathed with him.
All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations,
baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
The words struck their hearts like arrows of pure light. Some disciples closed their eyes as if trying to engrave that voice forever within their souls. Others looked around, imagining the impossible. Distant peoples hearing that message, cities that did not yet exist being transformed by it. It was as if the horizon had suddenly widened. Jesus continued,
and behold, I am with you always, even to the end of the age.
The impact of those words seemed to make the very air tremble. On that tranquil hillside, the mission was born, not as a simple command, but as a fire spreading through dry straw. An irresistible calling, greater than all others, greater than time itself. But something was still missing. Before departing, with the serenity of one who masters both life and eternity, Jesus said,
Remain in Jerusalem until you are clothed with power from on high.
The disciples looked at each other. They did not fully understand what was to come, but they trusted. They trusted because the one who spoke had conquered death. And then it happened. Jesus was taken up. First, gently, his feet leaving the ground as if gravity had lost its hold on him. Then a growing light surrounded him, warm, vibrant, impossible to gaze at for long. Finally, a glorious cloud descended and enveloped him, hiding him from their eyes as if heaven were reclaiming its king. The disciples stood motionless, their hearts torn between admiration and burning longing. The silence that followed was so profound that the sound of their own breathing seemed to echo. Then 2 men appeared beside them, dressed in resplendent white robes, as if they had emerged from within the cloud itself.
Men of Galilee, why do you stand looking up into heaven? This same Jesus who was taken up from among you will come in the same way you saw him go into heaven.
That message burned into their hearts. He had gone, but he would return. A double promise, eternal. The walk back to Jerusalem was slow, almost solemn. No one dared to utter a word. Each step in the dust seemed to mark the beginning of a completely new chapter in the universe. The world had changed, and so had they. When they arrived, they went up to the upper room. Men and women, about 120, gathered as one flame, praying, weeping, waiting. Time seemed suspended there. No one knew how long they would stay, but they knew exactly who they were waiting for. Days passed. Outside, Jerusalem pulsed. It was Pentecost. Pilgrims crowded the streets, vendors shouted, different languages mingled like converging rivers. Cultures met and clashed, but no one, absolutely no one, imagined that they were about to witness the birth of something eternal. On the 50th day,
When the morning still lay silently over Jerusalem, the sky roared. It was not a distant thunderclap, nor the common breath of an east wind. It was something different, something that seemed not to come from outside, but from within. An invisible pulse, as if the sky itself were breathing into the earth. Then, suddenly, a sound erupted, a roar like that of a raging storm about to shatter mountains. The noise filled the entire house where they were gathered. There were no cracks or corners that escaped that wind that did not stir dust, but stirred souls. The walls vibrated as if responding to an ancient call. The air writhed, alive, laden with something that no human word could name. And then they appeared. Flames. But not ordinary flames. They didn't consume, they didn't wound, they didn't destroy. They were living lights, tongues of fire that descended like small crowns upon each of them. The heat that coursed through their bodies didn't burn their skin. It burned away their fear. Their hearts raced as if they were about to burst from their chests to release something sacred. And then it happened. Words began to flow in an irresistible torrent. They weren't learned words. They were languages they had never even heard. Their breath became prayer. Their voices became prophecy. The upper room was too small to contain such power. Each disciple found himself seized by a force that seemed to unite heaven and earth within him.